So today we're joined by Maria Harris. She has decades of experience in the mortgage industry and has a unique perspective of the digitalization of the mortgage market through her roles at Adam Bank and at her current role as a director at Digital Cat Consultancy. Thank you very much for being here, Maria.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So, just to get things started, Maria Harris, who is she? Where's she been? Where's she going? Yeah.
So decades in the industry makes me sound ancient. I probably had quite an unconventional route into mortgages, as I think most people did. Not many people kind of choose it as their career, do they? So I actually started in contact centres. I used to run big customer centre sites for British Airways and then for npower, nothing to do with FS whatsoever, all customer facing, sales, customer service, and for big brands where, things like MPS were kind of like live and die by. But because contact centres are kind of really fast moving, you tend to do lots of change, lots of innovation. You're usually at the front end of technology and trying new things. So I kind of got a really nice blend of both. And then I decided at the age of 30 that wouldn't it be a really good idea to go to university while working full time with a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old and do a postgrad degree. But on the back of that, I actually got headhunted by what was then HBOS. And they were looking for contact centre or operational managers who had non-banking experience, who could bring in what they knew from other industries and best practice and could learn the banking side as part of that. And it happened to be that the placement I got was in mortgages. So I joined HBOS. I ran their mortgage processing centres in Glasgow and then in Manchester, all of which were intermediary applications. So I got to know lots of intermediaries and I ended up working in intermediary distribution. So then I was head of sales, Bank of Scotland, Intelligent Finance, and then the crash happened and we merged with Lloyds. So I stayed there for a while, did intermediary distribution for Lloyds. And then I went off to do some startups because I wanted to get back into that whole innovation, kind of get back onto, the kind of customer facing type stuff. So I worked in building societies for a while. I did some startups, I launched some new lenders. And then one of my really good friends in the industry rang me to say that they were setting up a new bank and would I come and talk to them about mortgages? Not with the intention of working with them, just can you come and talk to us about it? And it was for Adam Bank. And Mark Mullen just described this vision to me of building something that was completely and utterly technology based. First neobank, first app, blank sheet of paper with no legacy. And he was like, can you come and set up mortgages? And I couldn't really say no. And then obviously the decision to headquarter the bank in Durham was kind of like the thing, because I live 9 miles from Durham, and to create a legacy in the region that you live and in an area of the country that really needs that kind of investment and support
it's not just another London bank.
No, it's a huge legacy to have left. So to have created all these jobs in fintech and to have done something that's just so seismic was just, absolutely amazing. So loved all my time at Atom, did some incredible things, but then spent so much time doing events and talking to people who were like, how did you do that? We want to do that. Our customer experience is really poor. We don't really know what all this technology stuff, how to use it, how to choose. Can you come and help? I've ended up setting up my own consultancy, and now I help mortgage lenders and building societies and mortgage technology firms and mortgage brokerages to work out what their options are and to redesign their customer and user experience. It's pretty cool.
No, thank you very much for that. So you have a very unique experience of during the dark days, I suppose, of mortgage market digitalization. How did your experience, pre-digitalization, really help you when you joined Adam Bank in order to help them to come to market?
I guess it's like most experiences, isn't it? You learn most from the things that really don't work, and from the things that are really broken, and all the things that you're frustrated with in terms of customer experience, but also usability and not being able to react quickly and not being agile. And when you kind of grown up in big bank, as I did, and I joined the industry 2006, so right before the crash, but the ability to then be thrown into something that was a global, just a global impact, where you had to do things really quickly, but your systems didn't allow you to. And the constant demand for, tell us all your data, tell us what's in your book, tell us what customers you've got, tell us what's happening with this. And you're trying to pull that stuff together was so painful. So you kind of learn from all those things that really hurt at the time. So when you get to start with a blank sheet of paper, which is one of those once in a lifetime, nobody gets to set up a bank from scratch. It's just not a done thing. So to start with a blank sheet of paper and go, the first thing we have to do is get our data strategy right. The data has to come first. It has to be digital only. Everything has to flow, but you have to design around an end-to-end customer experience, not just the very siloed way the market's kind of grown up. And, the market's grown really organically over 150 years, but it's very, very siloed. So, yeah, just been able to think differently about how the customer transitions from one phase to the next, and how they're communicated to, and how they're engaged, and how you give the customer that kind of feeling that they are in control and that they have some part of the process that they are playing, and that they're not just a passenger. And we designed Bank with that in mind. It was completely like, this is customer obsessed, digital first, data first, and the user experience internally also has to be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this is like nowadays you look around and you see a lot of other industries, not nearly as regulated or has been around nearly as long as, say, the banking industry, but there's more digital experiences. It's just an expectation for customers. Where is it currently? Where does it stand? Has there been noted progress, or is there still, like, how much is left to be done, really?
Yeah, so I'm going to sound like I'm being really brutal about the industry, but we are so far behind, and I'm not even sure if we recognise just how far behind we are. And I know our industry is complex, and I understand all of the reasons why it's challenging for us to do that. And it's actually really hard for a disruptor to come into our space because of how fragmented the market is. And in different industries, in retail or hospitality or transport or travel, where you've seen really big leaps forward in new people coming to market with very new experiences and designing things, it's so much easier for them to get access to the data and to bring different parts together to create something that works really well, but also to use things like analytics. So customers have gotten so used to Netflix or Spotify telling you what to watch next based on what you like, or based on what other people like you have liked, and making kind of almost serving things up to you. And financial services just isn't there yet. And mortgages particularly, because there's no one place where the data sits. There's no one owner or custodian of the data. It's split between government, industry, local authorities, who are all at very different stages of trying to digitise themselves. So you've obviously got, banks who've spent a lot of money trying to get off legacy platforms, trying to create customer experiences, trying to use more modern tools to kind of create a customer UX or a customer UI. But unless all of the data is there and all of the disparate parts come together, you only really fix on one bit of it. So I kind of feel like we talk about this, cycle of change. We just have a cycle of despair in the industry where we keep thinking we've cracked stuff, and we haven't. We've cracked one tiny little bit of it, and the rest still doesn't hang together. And I don't think we're really tackling that end to end.
So you were just talking a moment ago about how fragmented the industry is, and how data sits with a multitude of players. So, in a perfect world, how do you go from data sitting in multiple different areas in order to kind of bring that data together and, help and, create a more coherent customer journey from here?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot when you talk about people who've come in and disrupted industries. It's not just that they design different experiences and use different technology. It's actually like they think differently. And most of fintech and most of innovation and digitalization is actually around culture and mindset and collaboration, and moving away from this quite antiquated view that we've had in the mortgage industry, that you have to build everything yourself and you have to own your tech and you have to have complete control over the end-to-end. Whereas actually innovation and digital innovation is all around, there's bits of different experience or different technology, or the different expertise in different bits, and how do you glue it all together to make the whole more than the sum of the parts. And I don't think we're there in the industry, in the mortgage industry. We're not famous for our collaboration. And like I say, that we've grown very organically over a number of years, but if you think about the process that a home buyer goes for, from getting ready to even think about, how do I get a mortgage? How do I find my property? How do I get the right mortgage product or advice? The bit they go through with a lender, and then they think that I've spoken to my lender, I've got a mortgage in principle or whatever. They think, oh, job done. And actually for the industry, that's the start of the process, because what then happens then is all the things that are kind of really important, like evaluating the property and evaluating the credit risk of the customer, and then all of the legals and all of that stuff happens after the customer thinks that they're at like the end point and we're at the start point. And all of those bits of the industry, from that kind of right the way through, from even getting a customer ready to be mortgage ready to having a mortgage completed, moving into their home and being a responsible homeowner, that is so wide. And we never get together and do an end-to-end customer experience. And that's not the way that the industry's grown up. It's like legal are over there, surveying are over there, lenders are over here, brokers are over there. And we get together and we work on things, but we don't design together. We don't design together customer first, data first, digital first. Our systems don't speak to each other. We don't share data. We have lots of swivel chair processes going on. We don't trust each other's data. You get a customer who will go to their estate agent and do their ID and V check. Then they'll go to the mortgage broker and probably do an ID and V and maybe an anti-money laundering check. Then their mortgage lender will do all of the same checks again. And then the conveyancer has to do them all again. So that's 4 times we've put the customer through one process, because the data doesn't speak to the different systems, but because we don't trust each other's processes. So the whole thing for me just leads like an absolute rethink of how the industry works together, but how we collaborate. But that's why it's so hard for somebody to come in and disrupt, because how do you disrupt that whole thing? It's not like payments where you can come in and just disrupt one bit of it and make a big difference. If you want to do something different in mortgages, it's a big...
I mean, this is something that we found at OnLadder. It's that, obviously the customer, the first-time buyer, the one that needs a deposit loan to help them get on the housing ladder faster, they're just one of our customers. Really, we have like 5 customers: the mortgage lender, the debt funder, the intermediary, you name it. We have to talk with them. We have to understand their position and to be able to craft a product that works for them as well. But I guess so. We've definitely seen that. But I guess, what do you think it'll take in order for industry to like come together? It's culture, it's regulation, it's a lot of things. But what is it really? What do you think it'll take in order for some of these stakeholders to start communicating?
Yeah, I mean, we have been trying. I mean, I've made it sound like nobody tried. We have been trying. So one of the roles that I get to do is I chair the technology subgroup for home buying and selling. And home buying and selling is a voluntary group of industry, government, trade bodies who've been working for about 4.5 years, I think, to try and improve the home buying process. But there's lots of things, you were talking earlier about housing strategy and shortage of supply, and you've got issues with leasehold reform, and you've got issues then that have come out about cladding, and you talk about home buying, and it's just, there's so much to go at. So they've been trying to fix different bits of that. And that group were, great during the pandemic and wrote the guidance on how to get the home buying market open again, and for people to be able to move house safely during the first wave of COVID and all of that. So they've done some amazing things. But one of the things that we've talked about a lot the last couple of years is, how do we redesign the home buying process so that we pull that data up front? And, we do it, we see it in other countries. Scotland have home buying reports and things that are upfront information. You see it much more in Europe and Australia and places, and in America, where actually all of the data about that property is actually available before the property's even listed. And in other countries, that's really normal. And they don't have the same issues that we have. Like, they don't have the fall through rates. They don't have the same challenges of lenders or a customer thinking they've got a mortgage and then finding out there's an issue with the title, or there's an issue with, a covenant that they didn't know about. So we've been talking about that a lot the last couple of years. And about 2 years ago, they launched a buyer and seller property information pack to try and get estate agents and conveyancers involved with the customer much earlier in the process. But it's been a really soft launch, and some people have tried it just to see how it works. So last year, the guys came to me and said, we need a digital solution for this. We need somebody to actually think about the customer journey from the customer's perspective, but also how it then impacts user experience for an estate agent, for the conveyancer, and etc. So we've been working on that since last July. we're obviously working with government and industry and trade bodies, and what we've built is a property data trust framework. So it's a bit like, think open banking, but for property data, where what we're saying is for all of the people who are custodians of the data, we need it to be in a digital format. We need it to work under fair principles, so it needs to be findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. We need to be able to trust it. We need to know what the primary sources of those data are. So if it's titled, we need to know it came from Land Registry. And we need to provide the provenance that said that data came from Land Registry, therefore you only need to collect it once and it can be shared and trusted by everybody in the process. But how do we make that available right up front before a property's even listed? So we're working on that. We've been working on that since last summer. We're in a really good place. We've done a couple of proof of concepts. We've got a nice little group of industry volunteers who've just given, oh bless them, hours and hours of time and dev and testing and stuff to like prove that this actually works. So the conversation now is with Department of Housing and with DLUC, Levelling Up, to say, how do we then roll this out in a way that's a bit more structured? How do we get government on board? Because most of the data sits with government or local authorities. And then how do we get the industry in a good place where this becomes the standard in the same way that we did with open banking? So that's been really interesting. And, I'm optimistic, cautiously, that we will get some traction on this. And we've got a lot of people who are kind of behind it conceptually. What we now need is for the industry to actually step up and start doing the development, to have API endpoints, to be able to consume the data, to be able to show the provenance of the data, to do the work on the front end to make the data available to the right people at the right point in time. So there's a lot of work to do, but at least the industry's talking about it now, which is good progress.
Yeah. There's these massive efforts in order to change the way the home buying process works and move data, to the forefront in order to make the whole process easier for all stakeholders, which is great. And everyone seems to be, it takes time, it's slow, but it's good that everyone knows there's a problem and wants to help with that solution. But I guess that kind of attitude is, it'll only take you so far. Sometimes you need new technologies to be kind of introduced in order to help these things along and make it even easier for these stakeholders to say yes. What kind of new technologies are being employed right now in order to help with this?
Yeah, and there are some really lovely people coming through. So obviously we get a lot of startups who come through as prop tech. We've got Geovation, who have a really nice lab where they're helping people do interesting things with property data, which is really helping. But at industry level, we have got big lenders and building societies who are moving on to cloud native platforms and being able to actually use APIs, which is just which sounds like, if when you come from tech, it just sounds like the most simple thing in the world. But that's not where our industry's come from.
Yeah.
We've had APIs since 2000, and it's just like for everybody else, it's like, yeah, it's an API. But for some of our industry, having an API is a really big thing because they've got on-premise solutions, or they've got stuff that's still built on old web code, and it's not easy for them to set up point-to-point APIs. So yeah, even having lenders who are building solutions, we've got lenders who are moving on to digital-first platforms for things like sales and origination and broker portals, and being able to share data from one to another, and being able to actually collect tokenized data from an intermediary, so that if they've done things like an ID&V or an open banking check, that they can pass that through. So those things are definitely happening, which is cool. We've got some nice prop tech startups coming through who are doing really interesting insights and kind of consumer education about what the property data is actually telling them, so that it's not just the data being kind of presented back, it's giving the consumer this and so what? Yes, there's this on your title, or there's this on a flood risk, or there's this on I live in County Durham, you can guarantee that I'll have a call authority flag that'll go, there will have been mining where you live at some point. And it's that, telling the customer, what does that actually mean? What do I really need to be worried about? What do I need to go and find out more information about? So there's lots of those really nice tools coming through. And then, we've got people like Trade and Standards as well, who recently announced that some of the information which is in the upfront information pack needs to be made mandatory on listings. And that is being rolled out from 1st of July. And it's being rolled out in 3 phases. But even that's kind of forcing estate agents and estate agent CRM systems and the portals to then create space for that data to be displayed. So, those things are coming down the line. And I'm really lucky that I get to work with some amazing tech companies as well. And you've got people like Codeute, who are the first mortgage on a distributed ledger, who are using R3 Corda, which is a permission blockchain, to create a really nice way of helping people who maybe have older technology or don't want to integrate to 170 lenders point to point, to join a network where they only have to connect once and they can share that data over a really safe environment and with all the data security and all the provenance and everything that they need there. So yeah, we've got some really lovely solutions coming through. It is good. The thing that I do worry about though is all of this is going to be great for the home buying and selling process. But as we said earlier, the customer's journey actually starts like about 2, 3, 4 years before that.
Yeah.
And we've got a big bit before to do, and then we've got a big bit after you buy your house to do. And the whole life cycle of being a homeowner is not just this one bit of the transaction. So I think we've got a lot of work to do still on working out the rest of that customer journey and how we use data and tech to enable some much better solutions. And, some of those challenges that we've had, just fixing the core competency of the transaction, I think have stopped us from doing as much innovation with mortgage products and with helping people get mortgage ready and with helping first-time buyers to even be able to get in the first place. I think that's, we almost need to get that basic foundation stuff just done and delivered and actually free up our headspace and our time to then get innovative and creative and create new products and do some other stuff that would be really interesting.
Yeah. No, there's just multiple. There's so many opportunities for innovation here. Like you were saying, it's the home buying process and making sure that all the stakeholders are chatting to each other to make sure that they have a coherent customer journey. But there's also, mortgage product innovation, and it's this comes back to just the way the market works in the UK at the moment. House prices are just so high, affordability is being stretched, and it's not necessarily about the times when house prices are high as well, but it's in the times when maybe there was a dip and mortgage lenders then are asking for a larger deposit as a percentage of the house. So there can be, like you were talking about, there's planning like years in advance for these home buyers in order to maybe save and like get into a position to buy a house. But there's all sorts of things that can just happen along the way that are not completely out of their control. They could be doing the right things, but it could be based on the market circumstances that they're just not in a position anymore, even though they expect it to be. So it's about making more flexible and fair mortgage products in order to ensure that they have a chance to get on the ladder, even if bad things happen in the market.
Yeah, and I think that is quite a stress for the market generally. I don't want to get into a load of macroeconomics, but we're in a really weird situation right now, which we talked about that the pandemic is unprecedented. Mm-hmm. So once in 100-year event, but then it's been followed by a whole load of stuff around inflation, cost of living crisis, what's happening in Ukraine. The cost of living squeeze means that lenders have to be careful and they have to be prudent with their risk taking, and they're obviously going to be under stress to make sure that they keep homeowners in their home as best they can and help them navigate their way through this crisis. But you've got this huge pent-up demand of people who want to buy houses, right, and are going to struggle to save a deposit and have got their income squeezed, and wage rises aren't going to go up at the same rate as inflation this year. Although inflation will start coming down next year because that this is like a bit of a one-off event. But all of that, like, how do you educate customers around that and get them to understand the impact that macroeconomics has on their ability to get a mortgage or to save for a deposit, and how best to navigate those things and to put themselves in the best place that they can, so when the market does start to recover, they're ready to go. But for lenders, that's a really tough thing to navigate, where you're trying to protect your balance sheet, protect your existing customer base, but support a housing market that still has huge amounts of demand, not enough supply, big issues coming up with private rented sector and the new standards that have to be in around energy efficiency and all those kind of things. Like the market is really complex, and there's just so many dynamics at play that I think that just creates so much tension, and again takes up all of the time and the resource and the thinking. So we don't get creative about the product itself. A mortgage is a mortgage is a mortgage, and has been since the day I joined the industry. We've gone from 25 years to 30-year terms, maybe 35, 40 at a push. We've gone from 2-year fixes to 5 with a little bit of 10 thrown in. We've gone from having, lots of variable rates to lots of fixed rates, but the actual mortgage itself hasn't really changed. And I'm a bit like, yeah, whereas you've seen so much more innovation in other retail products, and we haven't seen it in mortgages yet.
So let's look ahead, short term and long term. From a short term perspective, some of the initiatives you're working on, it's about getting that information for the customer upfront. So I guess with regards to that, what will that look like for the customer? Having that information up front, how does that change the game for them to make this a less painful process? And then if you can then just talk about even after that, what's next? That'd be great.
If we deliver our property data trust framework the way we think it's going to work, then the game changer is just so impactful on the customer, but also on the industry. Because right now, if you're a homeowner who wants to sell your property, quite often you don't even know the data about your own house, which is a bizarre thing to say, but you don't. But you buy a car, you get a car logbook, you get a service history, you get all of the manual and the spec and everything that comes with it. Like, you know everything you need to know about that car. And we don't do that with houses. It's the most bizarre thing. So we get the data once when we buy the house, and then we used to get it in really, really big paper files, which freak MD out, who's like younger than 35. But it used to come in this really big brown envelope with a ribbon and a wax and stuff attached to it. And then it would sit in the bottom drawer somewhere, and you'd never look at it again until you needed the deeds or something, you were selling your house. So there's a big bit about how we actually help people who own their houses today to understand what their property is, what their energy rating is, what their carbon consumption looks like, what is actually in their title. If it's not freehold, what is the lease or the tenure? What does that actually mean? And if you're thinking about selling your house, what are the things that you need to check first? And what does a potential buyer need to know, because it might impact their ability to buy that house, but also whether or not it's the right decision for them to buy that. Stupid things like, if there's something in your title that says you can't ever park a caravan on your drive, but the person who's buying your house looks after their mother-in-law's caravan for 6 weeks a year, like, they need to know that. So there's a big thing there about just, homeowners knowing what they have and having access to that data. But at the point where you do want to sell your house, being able to share that data with the right people in real time. So that's things like instructing a conveyancer right up front and having the conveyancer check the things that need to be checked. And then you don't have problems later down the line, because you get the chance to fix anything that needs fixed up front, or you at least can tell a buyer, this is something that you need to know, and you can make a decision on that basis. So for buyers are probably going to see then property listings and be able to click through to get way more information than you would get normally, because normally you get all of this at the end of the process, whereas you would get it right up front. So buyers are going to have way more transparency, way more trust, way more confidence in what they're buying, and will just be able to know that what they're actually looking at is what they think they're buying, and to make a decision on that basis. And then you start the mortgage application process. You're going to have a mortgage broker who can give much better advice, because they're going to know so much more about the property and be able to place it with the right lender, especially if there's something quirky. You're going to get a lender who's going to be able to make a better risk-based decision, because again, they're going to know so much more about the property up front, and they can price for that risk. You're going to get a valuer who's not going to have to value based on assumptions. And then the conveyancer, who's then doing the kind of buyer's bit of it, will know that a huge amount's already been checked up front. So they're not expecting to find problems, and you'll already have a really good idea on what data has been used so far, what decisions have been made on that data. So it's just the biggest fundamental shift. It literally is taking the process and turning it on its head. So short term, and I'm talking short term as in, I would love to see the industry starting to develop their own solution for their bit of it next year, and that actually by the following year, this is the norm for customers, and that people who are buying and selling houses are in control and have that trust and that transparency and can make really good decisions and have more influence over how long the process takes. Because right now the process is dictated because of the way the process works. The customer doesn't really have a huge amount of say in that. Whereas if you've got all the data up front and actually all the checks have been done, people can move in 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever they want, but with a degree of certainty. And that's just it's just such a game changer for all sorts of interesting reasons. So short term, 2 to 3 years, I would love that to be the norm, and that all properties in the UK have some kind of property passport, property logbook, and that all of the data is just there in real time, up front, and shared instantly and trustable. So it would be like, it sounds dreamy, but that would be cool. Once we fix that and we start looking because 3 years is a long time in digital as well, like 3 years is like a big step forward. The amount of things that we'll then be able to do for people who are pre-process, as in getting ready, open banking becoming open finance, way more around data insights and helping customers educationally to be mortgage ready, but also just to understand like how to use their money well. And we talk a lot about mental health in the industry, but actually financial health is a huge bit of mental health. And there's lots of studies that prove where you have good housing, good financial stability and good physical health, actually mental health is like so much better. So I think we've got a lot of work to do on financial education and financial wellness, and I'd love to see us using the tech to do those things. And then post people buying their houses, there's, we've got the drive to get to carbon neutral, to get to energy efficiency, to be able to use our homes more responsibly, but to understand how we make those improvements on our houses. And there's huge finance opportunities there to do that, to help people to upgrade, to renovate, to change the things that need to be changed, to understand the impact of white goods and electronics and how you offset all of those things. So I think that's where our longer term future will be. And it has to be that way because the reporting for things like carbon are coming down the line really quickly.
Yeah.
They'll be here before we know it. And like I say, most people don't know what they've got in their house today, never mind how energy efficient it is. So yeah, I think kind of longer term, that's where we'll be really focused.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to energy efficiency, the current rules are for buy-to-let, but I mean, how long till it's for residential? Buy-to-let is I guess, is the proof of concept for these regulations. So there's going to be a lot of things that need to be done with energy efficiency. It's buy-to-let now, but residential later. But I guess this is probably a good place to wrap it up. But yeah, thank you very much for your time, Maria. It was great to talk with you about this.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.